It's January 26th, 2022, and we are talking to Dominic Callis, the VP of Esports for TSM. This is the True Sight Podcast. Welcome to the True Sight Podcast by Oracle's Elixir, your source for in-depth analytical coverage of professional League of Legends and the rest of the esports world. I'm Tim at Magic Sevenhusen, and joining me today is TSM FTX's new Vice President of Esports, Dominic Callis. Welcome to the show, Dominic.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You joined TSM how long ago now?
So mid-December, and it's been kind of, I was allowed to run for about a month underneath the shadows without the public announcement, but then the announcement was made here mid-January, and so it's been good. It's finally been nice to get the news out there and eventually, start talking to people and start networking and kind of building a lot of connections which are necessary in this ecosystem. So
yeah, so the TSM fans who are always, ravenous for any news or anything going on, especially at the upper levels of the organization's kind of a big deal. So I'm sure they're starting to get to know you a little bit and who you are, but maybe we should just launch in by getting a little bit of that backstory about you, learning a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what led you to joining this role at TSM.
Yeah, definitely. So I started my career in venture capital and private equity. So in predominantly the majority of my time was looking at old software companies that were made in the 1970s, 1980s, and had kind of grown to a certain scale, looking at taking a couple of those businesses, putting them together, turning it into something bigger and better, improving some of the operational processes, and then, eventually selling it to another partner or just running it as a larger business and operation. So that was a big part of my initial part of my career that I did that for 3 years. And during that time, 4 out of my 5 investments were on larger private equity deals, dealing a lot with sourcing and financial analysis, market analysis, and all that sort of time. And when I was doing that, one of the areas that I was looking at was game design software, movie effects software, and obviously came across esports, probably around 2015, 2016, around that time. And we started basically a project to say, hey, we want to find the right entry point into esports, but we don't know quite where that is. So in the VC ecosystem, what you'll do is something called an entrepreneur in residence, where you'll actually look to just go out and hire a good CEO to help build a company around that, invest in that, and then help grow it up to what it becomes. We went through a bunch of candidates, a lot of candidates that were even, our senior executives now at other esports teams, but ultimately landed and partnered with Kevin Chu, who was the former founder of Kabam Games, which, had sold for billions of dollars, and a really, really smart guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And basically started with that, helped him build his first pitch book for KSV Esports, which then ultimately got invested in by my company, Battery Ventures, and a few other partners, and grew over that time. I was helping in the back end for the first 6 months, but then it basically ultimately ended up where I was spending a lot of time with KSV and Gen.G, going through the acquisition of Samsung Esports division and a lot of the PUBG teams that they were looking at bringing on, initial parts of the Overwatch League and stuff like that, and ultimately asked and was kind of asked by the executive team there to come over and help kind of lead North America initiatives and help with sort of global expansion as well. So I joined KSV Esports, which then turned into Gen.G Esports, spent 3 years there, was one of the earlier employees there, and it's now north of 250, 300 employees. They've really, really grown and expanded to be one of the biggest esports orgs in the world. And I honestly was in a great spot, and I don't think I would have ever left that spot unless it was something really, really special. But when TSM comes knocking, it's a pretty loud knock. And so I got recruited by a recruiting firm called New Level Recruiting, and they basically said, hey, we need someone to come into TSM that can help oversee the esports department division. And so that's why I kind of made that jump, is I really think there was maybe 1 or 2 other esports orgs I ever would have considered, and TSM was on that name. So It's been a great transition. There's a lot to do. I think the biggest thing that I want to communicate is, what was really important to me is that TSM is very, very well capitalized and run very well from a financial standpoint, and so you don't ever need to worry about a franchise going bad, or something happening in the market which would could potentially like end the org. TSM is very strong from that point of view, and also they have a really, really large organic fan base. There's a lot of esports orgs out there who are trying to build that fan base, and you find out to build real people that care about your brand is really hard. And TSM had that. And so the big thing that they were lacking is something that I'm really, really good at, which is, basic operational processes, ways about thinking of scaling a company, making sure that the foundation is strong, that certain things are in place so that an org can succeed in a certain way. And so I've been doing that for the last 6 years of my career. And it's something that I'm really looking forward to bringing here at TSM.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess a way you could describe that is it's so difficult to kind of catch lightning in a bottle, but at a certain point, then you have to build a stronger bottle, right? And the lightning is the hard part, but
Exactly. So I really do have to say, like, over the last 5 years, even, post the TSM's, big run up initial years in 14, 15, 16, and then, growing on top of that with Fortnite and, a lot of other initiatives, basically TSM grew so freaking fast that they didn't have the time to basically put in a really, really strong, foundation within the org and set in certain operational processes, which are really, really, really important for a company to be around long term, and that's the ultimate goal here, right? Is for TSM to be around in 100 years and to be a brand that can grow and establish well beyond its means just within esports. So I think that's something that they're looking to try to right size right now, and that's something that's really, really exciting. It's not just me coming aboard. There's 2 or 3 other names which will hopefully be announced really soon, which are like going to bring a lot of sort of managerial power to the table, and allow a real sort of executive team to be built out, which before, like, it was growing so fast, and prior members who were here were doing such a great job of holding everything together as the growth was exploding. And so it's a good problem to have, but I think it's one of those things that those problems are sort of being addressed now. And it is sort of a new era, right? There's a lot of fresh blood coming into TSM, and making sure that we continue that growth and that momentum that was there before is something that's hard. Again, I think a lot of people view TSM as sort of the Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys, that, they've had a bunch of success previously, but fans expect that winning to always continue to happen. And so that's something I'm trying to work on, and trying to make sure that we have the right processes in place so that we can continue that winning, and we have a structured format so that those sort of things can happen on a more regular basis, and it's just not lightning in a bottle sort of scenarios.
Yeah. Have you had much opportunity to learn about what led to yourself and the other executive team coming on? Because, I imagine often when you have an organization like this that is founded by a player, right? Like Reginald created this because he was a player, he wanted a team, and then it all kind of led from there. And he didn't come in with a business background and things like that. And, sometimes you see scenarios like this, and the founder kind of picks that up along the way. Sometimes they continue to focus on other things, and they know that they have certain areas they need support with. Was it just a matter of that level of leadership saying, okay, we need someone to come in to fill a kind of a gap in our skill set?
I think overall that I think the company and the industry as a whole realize that, TSM really is probably the biggest esports org in the world right now, or if not, one of the top 3 biggest esports orgs in the world.
Yeah,
and I think it basically got to
it a little bit, right? Like you get the stuff with the FaZe Clan or whatever, but they're such a different style of org entirely. So
exactly, but I mean, it's like you could even look at it in different ways, and there's a bunch of different ways of how you actually frame that definition. But again, I view TSM, exactly. But I think basically what happened is when you were the sole CEO sitting there, and you're basically realizing is like, man, I got a lot of things that I need to accomplish, and discussions with boards and all these sort of other things is like, man, I need to do a lot of it, but I can't do it all, right? And I think the realization basically was internally, it's like, hey, we really do need to invest in bringing in some strong people so that other members on the executive team can really focus on what they're good at and other initiatives that we're working on here internally, and then have certain people in certain positions that are able to focus on what they're really good at. And when you have people that's their sole focus and they're in the right swim lanes, they can really do a great job at executing on that, much better than one person trying to handle everything, in which case, some things may be dropped.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's kind of the more positive impetus of it is, things allow us to do more and do other ways. The less comfortable angle on it, I guess, or question that could be asked about it is obviously there's been some negative PR lately about Reginald and things around that. Is there any element of allowing the new executive team to be more in the spotlight and to add new and different faces and allow kind of the leadership above that to kind of take a little bit more of a quiet spot?
Yeah, and what I can say personally is, there's other things going on behind the scenes that I obviously can't speak about. But to tell you the truth, my personal experience with everyone working here at TSM has been absolute freaking joy. There's a new level of energy and excitement really within the office here that I'm sitting with and dealing with people on a daily basis. That I think while the ecosystem may see sort of like, maybe not have full visibility to that. What I can say here is like here within right now, it's like it's a new era. There's new excitement. There's new people in here, and it's really rocking and rolling, and we're excited for 2022. That's kind of my purview and visibility on it. It's like we can always go back and look at history and look at other things that have happened, but my focus right now has always been on kind of the future and what's kind of could happen and the opportunities that could happen here. And so from my purview, it's like I think things are really being set up in a way where it will be really, really exciting for not only TSM internally, but also externally for the fans and for the players as well. There's a lot of changes being made, and I think it's all for the better and for a great future here.
Cool. So as the VP of esports, I think you get a lot of different roles in these esports orgs, especially depending what size they are, right? And you have different levels of leadership. You could have a VP who is basically the general manager of the team, building the roster and hiring the staff and so on. You can have a VP that is much more organization level and overseeing, hiring the general managers for 10 different game titles or whatever. What is your kind of main role? What are your duties and responsibilities day to day?
Yeah, so I think the best way to think about it is that I have 100 things going on at the same time, and I'm trying to throw everything up in the air and make sure that I'm catching everything at the right time as it comes down. I'd say my big priorities over the past month have definitely been on doing sort of a more deeper and full analysis on, what are the current teams that we have, or the current creators that we have, building a little bit of that structure and thinking about the future there and the areas that we want to invest in, other areas that we, maybe shifting resources around. But then other really, really big part of my day to day is hiring, right? Like, to tell you the truth, we're doing a bunch of hiring. I think if anyone's seen on the TSM boards, there's a lot of different positions that are being done here internally. And when you get to someone that's at sort of my position, a lot of it is making sure that you have the right people around you, right? You're only successful as the people that are around you, and really empowering that staff. And so setting up different structures, we're not, the team managers aren't working all on every single team at the same time, and setting up swim lanes and making sure reporting lines are correct and all that sort of stuff, but also making sure that like my team feels empowered, feels like they have the agency to make decisions, that they feel that's like they can come to me with cool ideas and want to do cool initiatives and then execute on those. And I think maybe in some other, in other situations that wasn't there before. And so changing that mentality, changing the culture is a really, really big thing for me. I'm very much of, I think it's called servitude leadership in a sense, where it's basically my job is to help support my team managers, my middle managers, my GMs to help make the best decisions possible and help execute on those sort of things. Obviously, it's also my job to help challenge them and make sure that they're thinking about all the potential opportunities from that. But I found that empowering the people that work with you on a daily basis, you're going to create an amazing, amazing team that you can really go far beyond what, was just imagined before. And then the other big part of my job is instilling a lot of operational processes that weren't here before. And so that means like really, really proper onboarding, offboarding, making sure the right software systems are in place, making sure that, we're improving payment times, that like all these things are like working before, but there's always better ways to do it and make it quicker and quicker and faster. And the more that you can do stuff like that and make some of these processes work better and faster, allows you to spend more time to be creative and execute on a lot of these different areas within the org. And so that's what I'm trying to work on improving. And I think when we get a lot of these processes done here in 2022, it'll really, really allow us to execute in some cool ways here next year. But these things take time, right? Like you're trying to turn a massive company or a massive ship, and that turn takes a little bit longer than you would sometimes like. But we're making great progress there, so things are looking really good.
Yeah, I was just pulling up some of the, as you said, the on the hiring side, the job postings and things. Right now, it seems like it's in that kind of the content, marketing, apparel kind of space. Is
Yeah.
how much of your attention is focused on those kinds of kind of business aspects and interacting with the fan base as opposed to the competitive side?
Yeah, I'd say 99% of my time is really focused on esports, and it's focused on winning. But to tell you the truth, it's hiring in different ways. So I'll be able to share some new hires that are coming out shortly. But recently made a new hire this morning. James got announced as he's going to be coming on as an assistant coach here for the team. He was previously a team manager, but we found a really good role for him that I think can be in a way that can empower Chowie to really execute on his goal and all these sort of things. There's going to be some different areas and some different projects we're working on here internally. But again, bringing on new coaches, bringing on some of these other things that may not be put in the public hiring basis, but there's a lot of hiring and thinking of future planning of where we might have had holes and where we need to fill those holes. And so again, there's a lot that goes up to even putting a job posting live on the website, right? You got to think about and get approvals and all these sort of things. And so again, that's where I spend a big part of my time. And it's not the fun, sexy part. I think a lot of people outside of esports think that, the entire esports team sits around a big conference table and 95% of our day is talking about roster and player changes. It's not that. Exactly. So the majority of my time is setting up calls. It's networking. It's working with other executives to find out what they need in their different departments and how esports is integral to what they're doing on their initiatives, and making sure that communication processes, all these things are kind of getting done on a regular basis. And it seems like I'm just using that as like a safe catchword, but it really is a big part of what we're working on here.
Yeah, no, I know what you're getting at, and it's definitely not just washing over certain things. The getting postings together and getting people to have good meeting practices and all that kind of stuff can be really challenging. So especially in the esports industry.
Yeah, and making sure there's good communication across the board, right? Like there's a reason that I chose this desk out here. I was offered an office, and for me, it's really important to be able to sit here to communicate with the coaches, with the players, with everyone that comes up and around. Yeah, sometimes it can get loud, but to tell you the truth, like a big part of like improving things and making improving in processes is communication. And so if I can sit here and I can communicate with everyone, that makes my job a whole lot easier as well.
Have you noticed that you have to kind of swim upstream much on some of that communication stuff? Because in my experience in the esports industry, that has been a real uphill battle for several years.
I think it is. And to tell you the truth, I'm going to be blunt and honest. And it's like TSM hasn't been the best on communicating, not only with fans, but with media and a bunch of different bases. And so a lot of what I've been doing is reaching out to different media agencies such as yourself, Hotline League, and also some of the large firms, Bloomberg, Reuters, Yahoo on that sort of basis too. And basically saying, hey, I'm open to talk. I'm open to be a communicative person and sort of reestablish a lot of those relationships. So
if someone sends you an email, you're going to answer it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I have been trying my best at least once a day, during my dinner time to communicate also in the TSM Discord, trying to be a little bit more active on social media and try to be that. Again, I'm not going to be the fix to it all. And there's going to be some weeks where I am so busy and heads down that I won't be able to do that. But I think just trying to be as transparent as possible and try to communicate with as many partners and people as possible is going to be an important part of my job going forward as well.
Great. Looking back to some of the time that you've had with KSV and Gen G and now what you're doing here so far, I know it's still early, but are there any really noticeable differences you're seeing between the way this org runs and the way your previous experience has within the same industry?
Yeah, it's just different goals and what people are trying to achieve at the end, right? I think a lot of esports orgs, or at least the top esports orgs, have built side businesses around them of like what they're trying to become successful at, right? I'd say Fnatic is more, on their hardware business, and 100 Thieves is more on lifestyle, and Gen G was more on the education basis, and here at TSM it's definitely around software and websites and stuff like that. So I think when you have different different sort of side goal initiatives that you're helping and growing, and you also have different teams. You're going to have different goals and objectives and initiatives. So I'd say yes, of course, there's going to be a bunch of differences there, but I'm also trying to take a lot of my learnings from Gen G and what they've done very, very well and try to implement that there. Arnold Herr was one of the best bosses that I've ever had, and I learned a lot from him and can give him nothing but praise. But the program that he helped set up with our GM over there through, building out the academy team and a focus on developing players and, the success that we had basically within 1 year already winning summer and, driving a lot of those players into the LCK was something that I was really, really, inspired by and, helped a little bit in the initial process. We talked to a scout from Arsenal to help sort of start that and kickstart that initiative. But to try to do similar stuff here, to really focus on building and developing the next generation of talent is, I think, something Gen G did very, very well. And, I want to focus on working here. And I think there's a few different ways to do that. And again, you deal with different limitations being in the LCS. But I've also noticed coming here to the LCS that all the owners genuinely do care about, building NA players and building and growth and development. And you see that with EG. I think you've seen that with TSM, and I think you see that with a few other orgs. And that's really, really cool to see because, again, that's a passion of mine as well.
Yeah, cool. We'll see if we can get into that topic anymore because you obviously know that I'm big on the NA talent side of things and development, and I think having the orgs invested in that is super, super important. But maybe speaking a little bit more to, as you said, the goals the different orgs have, aside from kind of those bigger picture kind of software goals, obviously you've got, the Blitz app and lots of other websites that TSM, that some people might not even know TSM owns all these different websites. But maybe speaking a little bit more in the competitive space and on the esports side, what are some of the big goals that you're hoping to achieve over the coming year with TSM?
Yeah, so when you walk into TSM, and again, we have an amazing, amazing facility here, there's a massive trophy case on the side. And a big part of what is filled in that trophy case was, the old 2014, 2015. No, I think it may even be before then, 2014, like CSGO, some of the old trophies that were there. But then what is most prominently presented is the 7 LCS championships, right? Like this is what TSM is known for, is winning and dominating North America. And yes, there may be small gaps here in between where we didn't win an LCS championship, but almost every single year TSM was winning, right? And so I think the biggest goal for me is to continue to add not only League of Legends trophies to that massive trophy case, but to continue to add trophies from other tier 1 games and in all of our other titles that were in there, right? We had a great start to 2022 with, our Apex team winning the North American Championship and, so one down, but I think there's many, many more trophies to go here across all of our different titles and really focus on delivering meaningful wins for the TSM fan base is basically my main priority. And then also making sure that we're activating on our amazing creator group as well, right? I think it's something that has struggled a little bit over the past couple of years, and we're hoping to really revitalize and really focus on, the amazing creators we do have here as well. So
yeah, I'd love to dig a little bit more in a minute into the kind of the league side specifically, but
yeah,
on some of those other games, so you mentioned you got an Apex Championship. You've got teams in the spaces. You've had Fortnite presence. I believe there was another team just announced recently. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah. So we just announced our Dota 2 team, and for the people out there, there was never a restriction of you can't be in an LCS owner and to be in Dota and all that sort of stuff. Again, I think both ecosystems both games have their own ecosystem and are amazing in what they do, right? For us, this is a really, really exciting roster that we think can dominate not only North America, but make a really, really deep run at the international as well. It's a different game, right? And they have their own different challenges, and we understand those challenges, and we understand that it's been kind of rough within, the Dota scene. But we hope, hopefully that us coming into the ecosystem, helping give, North America a little bit of a boost of enthusiasm around Dota is great. I don't think you can you don't just need to be a League of Legends fan or just a Dota fan. I think you could be fans of multiple different MOBAs and understand the differences and appreciate those differences and understanding that they're different games. But again, they both draw tier 1 viewership, which, you know, is a million or above, you know, on ACV and peak basis. So I think that's the really exciting part for us, is because we feel being in this ecosystem allows us to drive a lot of value for our partners, a lot of value for our fans, and also there's a line of sight here to also win a bunch of North American championships, and, you know, maybe even, you know, if the coin flips the right way, make a shot at the international title as well. You never know how that can go. So a really good group of guys, really motivated, and I think that was a big part of us, you know, really wanting to partner with them, is that we had an aligned vision. They were all really motivated. We were all focused on the same things here, and it wasn't about other external things outside the game. It really was focusing on, hey, let's do something special here together.
How does an esports brand make the most of this opportunity to be present in all these other titles? Because it's something that doesn't exist in traditional sports, really. You don't have, you know, an American football team that is also a basketball team with the same brand. You got the same city, but it's such a different thing. How do you really leverage that unique opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really thinking about each opportunity differently, right? Like if you try to think of every game the same, you're bound for failure. And so I think even TSM is going through that thought process right now of like, hey, do we want to be in every single title possible, or do we want to be in a good select group of tier 1 esports with, you know, some other titles underneath there that are doing very well and delivering a ton of value, and then activate around creators, right? And so I think it's like that is what people are trying to think about and wrap their head around. There is no perfect model. There is no manual for this, right? Like everyone is figuring out what makes them special and what's right to them. I think for us, I think we saw a specific opportunity where we could get into a tier 1 esport. We could have a chance at winning. We could deliver a bunch of value, and that for us is important, right? And winning and delivering value for partners are two very important things for us. And so also winning helps, you know, grow the fan base and grows sort of the ecosystem is that as well, right? Like, I mean, you saw all the orgs that when we came into Dota yesterday were welcoming us and saying, hey, we're really excited to have you in the ecosystem. Multiple different owners reached out to us and it's like, hey, this is amazing, you guys, let's talk about ways that we can partner and do all these sort of things together. Esports orgs rarely are sitting there looking for the doom and the failure of other esports orgs. Again, all, you know, water rises all ships. And so for us, it's like, it's a really amazing opportunity to get with new partners and new ecosystem and engage with a new group of fans and continue to grow TSM, not only domestically, but globally as well.
Are there any things you've seen kind of on that front that help to kind of transfer organizational pride or fan base? Is it just like logo recognition? Is it things like the TSM chant, you know, showing up at a non-league event? Like what are some of the things that you notice and you go, this is working. We're really having our presence felt in other spaces.
Yeah, I think it comes through social engagement, online engagement, as again a majority of society moves toward online and engaging through online communication. Being able to see that level of engagement online is what drives a lot of like, hey, are we heading in the right direction, right? And I cannot wait to get back to LANs. LANs just changed a total different way and feel of viewing of an esport. But again, if you get into when people talk about LANs that they remember and things that they never forget, it tends to be LANs of tier 1 esports, right? Something for me that I will never ever forget is I went to 2019 Worlds when it was G2 versus FPX, and before the first game had ever been played, the stadium was just shaking with French fans, and it was the rowdiest thing that I've ever seen, and it was so loud, it was deafening as you could be, and like it was an unreal experience, and that's something we all want to get back to as well, right? But that sort of winning and winning at the highest level is what draws that level of excitement in that fan base, and I think that's what we're targeting, you know, here going forward.
Sure. Yeah. So let's get into League of Legends a little bit more. Let's talk some details there. So of course, you know, you're talking about this new energy and some new faces and new executive team coming in. And there were some very new things about the TSM League of Legends roster build this past offseason. Importing two players from the LDL, which is something that hasn't happened in a long time. Having a little bit of a younger focus in the Academy roster as well, replacing Hauntzer and Cody-san with, you know, Viper, another veteran, but not quite to the same level, and then Instinct, a brand new incoming player. What can you tell us about kind of the mindset for these changes? Was this a conscious effort to like, hey, we're going to reinvent ourselves and take a new direction, especially with Bjergsen leaving?
So I think a lot of these decisions were made much prior to my arrival, and so while I don't want to take credit for that, and I think a lot of stuff is like, again, I think I really want to help execute on some other plans that are laid out before me, but I think Parth has done an amazing job with that. I think him working hand in hand with Chowie and with Peter on a lot of these initiatives to really push forward the team. Also, Kays and Hatham have also been instrumental into kind of helping and building this roster and this idea, and I'm really really excited about it. I think the big core thing that I want to push going forward is even on our LCS team, it is the idea that, hey, we didn't want to bring over imports who thought, I've made an amazing career within my ecosystem, and now I'm coming here to North America to retire. These two young guys are as hungry as ever. They've never been given a shot, within their own region, and this is an opportunity for them to really show off and pop off, and they're really, really excited. I'm really, really happy and excited about it. Again, this is going to take a little bit of time to get everyone on the same page with synergies and communication and all that sort of stuff. It's been going well and improving day over day, but again, this is not something that's going to be an overnight success. And so I think the exciting part for me is that we're going to really, really see the growth and development of this team throughout the season. I think having a lot of new faces here helps keep that energy and positivity when things may not be clicking immediately. And so that's what I'm really, really excited about here. On the academy side, I think the team really stood up when they were called upon, and I couldn't be prouder of them. I think the biggest part for me is that these guys basically found out, due to other situations that were going on with our team, that they were going to have to not only play in the lock-in, but also, start on the academy basis. Yeah. And that meant a ton of games and a ton of prep. And it was, birthed by Brimstone. And they stood up to the challenge. I mean, they took down a starting LCS roster with everything that they had been working together. That you should have seen it around here. I mean, the guys were excited. They were jumping up and down and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, they had some rough losses in there, but to tell you the truth, the big takeaway from me is that they learned something from every single one of those losses, and will make themselves better for it this season. We're really, really excited. I mean, some of the names that you've mentioned, Tony and Viper and all the other guys have been great personalities here in the office. I think, Viper is, really established and a great leader on this team, and brings a sort of energy and positivity. I mean, look, he has two brothers that are basically amazing North American talents, right? It's like, I want to know what they're feeding their kids for breakfast, because it's absolutely fantastic. But I think, even on that sense, I think a big hope for me is making sure that the guys not only learn and develop this season, but finding ways to, help make them excited about being in the ecosystem as well, right? Like, I would absolutely love if we could go back and have these guys playing on stage, have, Viper's parents come out and see, their kid play on, a major stage and all that sort of stuff. There's a bunch of cool family history and legacy sort of stuff there too. He's a great guy as well. And everyone else on that team has been nothing but positive and exciting as well. So I again, the hardest part of my job is I really do view it as like I'm a dad of 135 different kids, and I really do want to take care of every single one of them. But sometimes, I need to do what's in the best interest for the org, and so I can't do that on a regular basis. And so, but just making sure that these guys are taken care of, they're well supported, and I think making sure they have good agents and they're being well supported on that basis. I think a lot of those are initiatives or things I'm going to push forward this year as well. That they're not only supported in game but out of game, and sometimes that always can't be done by the org, and a lot of time that needs to be done by agents, and making sure that these guys have good representation that they feel supported by as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that when you look at TSM, and especially over the past few years, you can definitely recognize that the org doesn't hold back on its effort level and its investment in trying to find the right players. And whatever you feel about some of the specific choices that have come out of these efforts, you can't downplay the efforts. With things like massive scouting combines, going to other regions and holding scouting combines there, and boot camping and all those kinds of things. What can you tell us a little at all about the effort level that went into this roster, and specifically to kind of the scouting efforts for these newer players?
Yeah, definitely. I can't speak again too much to it. I think the biggest thing that I can share about it is there were a bunch of people that were invited to these scouting combines. It was a really, really rigorous process. Parth and Case and Peter did an amazing job pulling this all together. I know that Parth was in Korea and China and in all over the world working on kind of getting this done in the off season. And I think it was something we were trying on the first basis. But I also want to make it clear out there that just because a player didn't get invited to a scouting combine or didn't get invited to something like this meant that they failed and we weren't taking a look. From my understanding, we were taking literally a look and an opportunity at everybody and anybody, and just kind of these were ways to collect a bunch of data very, very quickly. And so we may continue to do things like that in the future. But what I can say is that I think it gave us confidence that this was the right strategy, that we could build something special around long term, right? Like, I don't think you'll see us, quickly flip flopping with different strategies or ideas like this. I think again with Chowie at the helm here and helping execute his strategy and his his way of coaching with young talent that's hungry and aspirational, with North American talent that can communicate and help build around that as well. I think we have something special here when everything starts clicking.
Yeah, for sure. And how does there's a difference between kind of these trial processes and so on, and then boot camps. Once you actually have the team set up, once you know who the players are that you've selected, putting them into a really intense training environment for a while. What has been done around boot camping coming into this year?
Yeah, so I think it's been pretty public, but COVID screwed us pretty hard on our whole plans and initiatives. We were basically supposed to have everyone inside of China to be boot camping together, and ran into a lot of issues. I mean, almost all tied to COVID and into visa issues. But again, a big part of me coming in is helping already change those processes and making sure we're in a good place going forward. And a big part of that, I mean, a big reason almost all North American teams are boot camping in different areas is just not a lot of North American teams stay here during the off season, and so it's a good way to get confirmed really good scrim practice with other partners that are going to be staying in their home regions and they can work and practice with in a different environment. Every single sports team does this, right? Like NBA teams travel to different areas, MLB teams travel to different cities and do spring training and all that sort of stuff. And so we're going to be working on implementing that and making that a process going forward as well. So our LCS team will be traveling, to China every December, where guys will basically spend the whole month boot camping there, and then making sure that they're coming back here to North America when other North American teams are coming back, to make sure that we're practicing in our local market together after all of our learnings from our boot camp. But it also takes a lot of time and prep to make sure that you're ready and you have everyone signed and you're all ready to go by early December to make that happen. So I'm already starting on that now. Our head of China is already working through different boot camping locations and spots and activities and things that we can be doing there. And then around our academy team, this was the first year that we sent them to Korea to boot camp during the off season, and it was really, really successful. The guys really worked well together, and it was a good bonding environment. They were able to get daily scrims against multiple different partners of LCK and LCK challengers, league players that were basically there and willing and available to scrim with them. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this. I think a lot of people are like, oh, put them in better solo queue environments and all that sort of stuff. It's like, no, like there's a decent solo queue environment here. Yes, there's not as many players or different, but the big part of it for me on a competitive and like planning basis is to schedule regular daily scrims that these guys have really good teams that they can practice against on a daily basis. And here in North America, sometimes that means that if everyone else is boot camping around the world, I only get that opportunity with 2 or 3 different teams, right? And that can make it difficult. So this is just more optionality and more options for our players. Sorry, I got off track there. The academy teams are also had an amazing time boot camping in Korea, so we want to continue that process going forward, and we'll have our academy teams in Korea between spring and summer, and during December as well, to continue kind of their efforts and growth and development there. Again, during the season, we really, really want all of our guys on the LCS team and our academy team really working on Champions Queue, which will hopefully be coming soon here, and really working on improving the solo queue and practice environment here in North America. There's talent here in North America. There are very good players. When we at Gen G were preparing against Cloud9 for, last year, it's like we did not sleep on those guys. Like there's good players on all of these, I'd say top 5 North American teams, and any one of them can make a deep run given the right time, given the right prep at Worlds. And so I think there's also just been a little bit too much hate of the LCS. The LCS has actually been doing a really, really good job. And so I think a big part of my initiative here is also changing that mentality a little bit. It's like I think a lot of these guys kind of go with already weights put on their shoulders walking into Worlds, being like, oh, you're not going to make a deep run. It's like, no, there's good players here. It's just, let's change a couple things. Let's change a couple of processes here, and we can continue to be a top contending region as well. So
cool. Yeah. Do you think, the ability to go after these kinds of boot camps and send the teams around the world for these different things, is that somewhere that TSM has an advantage, just given like the size of the org and the resources you have available? Or is that something that you think is just like, obviously some other orgs are doing similar kinds of things, their own flavor of it, but not every org seems capable of doing this. Is that a difference in will and planning, or is it a difference in resources where you think you have an advantage?
I think it's a combo of both, right? And so, again, I think TSM very much is like the Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys, or, in college football, like an Alabama or an Oregon, right? Like we do have resources, but I mean, that comes from a long history of winning and being successful and being able to do these sort of things. So I think our biggest initiative is continuing to find ways to get better and improve, and continue on those sort of things, and understand that there's different teams with different goals and different strategies and different resources, right? And again, my big focus is focusing on TSM and how to make TSM successful, and obviously working with the LCS and thinking about ways that us as a collective can do some really big and exciting things in the future. But again, I'm not spending too much time really focusing on other team socials or what they're doing on that sort of basis. It's really thinking about, hey, how do we take TSM to that next level to already be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else? Not because we're trying to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of ourselves, but we're focusing on ourselves and can think about that forward planning.
Yeah, for sure. You've had this comment a couple of times, and I think it's one that is very common in the community about TSM being kind of that New York Yankees style organization, and I think often when people bring that up, it's a bit of a double-edged thing, right? Like being the big behemoth that everybody looks at and says they've got, they could just sign all the best players whenever they want. Everybody wants to play there if they can. They've got the money. But then you have the other side of it. It kind of tends to be the team that either you love or hate, right? And you've got the very vocal fan base. You've got the very vocal anti-fan base. What are some of the things you've seen around that coming in and maybe being on the inside of TSM as opposed to seeing it from the outside before?
Yeah, definitely. And what I can basically tell to every single fan out there is money does not buy winning championship teams. And again, I think the best case example for that is, when I was still at Battery Ventures and, Kevin Chu and that group was working on stuff, like we acquired the championships. The Samsung Galaxy team ran the same exact team back with the same exact players and that sort of basis. It did not have the best result, right? And so what I can say is that like money doesn't buy championships. It's a lot about culture. It's picking up the right players who are working with the right players at the right time. It's about motivation. It's about a lot of these different things that are intangible and it's hard to measure on. But again, that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to be here and help make sure that all those chemicals to the recipe are correct, and so that you can build a championship team. And I think there's a lot of other top tier esports orgs out there that are doing that same exact thing and have that same aligned goal, right? And it is a double-edged sword, right? Because if you look at some of these other large sports orgs that have had a long history of winning, there's a continued expectation to always continue to be winning, right? It's not just okay to make playoffs at the LCS level, right? Like it's expectations to not only win North America, but then make deep runs at Worlds, right? And so again, I think a big part of my job is also continuing to keep those expectations, but making it sure that it's being done in a way that I'm also putting in the work so that we can continue to reach that level of success. Because it's an initiative that's going to take everyone's effort here within the org. It's not just a single person, and so that's kind of my point on that.
Yeah, I think there's a certain set of expectations that can come up within the fan base when you are in this role in the scene. And maybe the fans start to expect that you can just get whatever player you want, and that money will just buy those players, and that your brand will just buy them. Oh, of course they're going to want to leave that team and play for us.
Yeah.
Maybe the clearest example being this offseason, how many TSM fans I saw enthusiastically and just expecting, for example, oh, buy Danny from EG, right? Oh, of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
Look how great he was in his first split, so we'll just get him.
Yep.
How do you manage those kinds of expectations when you go in and you look at it and then the fans think this is obviously feasible and we can do it. We're TSM. Just give them however much money they want, but you still have to manage against, well, the other org want to sell them. Will the player actually want to come here? Does it fit our plans? And then they might come in and be disappointed just because they built up this idea of what they think is the best move, and maybe it's not even the best move. I don't know, but
Yeah, definitely.
how do you kind of manage that set of expectations?
I think it's almost impossible to, but in the best way possible. It's trying to be as communicative as you can with the fan base and the community as possible, right? And also understanding that every single esports org out there, or at least the top 10 to 15 esports orgs in the world, all have the same goal to be winning on a consistent basis, right? No one here is here to just ship it in and just everyone wants to win. Let me just keep it as clear as that.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe what was lacking before is a little bit of communication. And communication can help set expectations, right? And if you do that in an effective way, I found out that the fan base can actually be very receptive to that. Yes, people are passionate about this team and care about this team, and that's what we want. And to tell you the truth, there's going to be losses and people are going to be very upset about certain losses, right? And I understand that. And to tell you the truth, it's like, it's totally fine to act it's totally fine to be upset, again, to a certain line, to a certain level. But I also think that negativity can sometimes be snowballed if there's no communication process that's going on at the same time, right? If it's loss after loss after loss after loss, and there's no communication on why this is happening or what's going on internally, again, you can't share everything internally. Like, there's a lot of things that must stay private, not only for the benefit of the team, but also for the player itself, right? Where the player may be in the wrong, but the org is just being quiet because, again, they don't want the player to get flamed and for this to become a worse issue, right? And so it's doing that to the best of your ability, which is a really, really hard thing to do. But I think setting, expectations, communicating with the community, understanding, helping them understand why certain decisions were made will really, really help go a long way. And I think that's something that I realized even at the LCK, where you got to the point where like we had hate trucks sent to Gen G, right? And so understanding that, like, being communicative to a fan base early on and trying to be an open resource. And again, I answer most of my DMs if they're respectful and done in a certain way. If you reach out via email, and I'll try to do the best to share it to my capabilities. And it may not be the answer that you're looking for, but at least I'm going to try to communicate with you and help try in the best of my ability to explain what I can explain. And I can't do that to almost anybody and everybody, but I think that's something special that I can contribute to this community that's not available in big four major sports, right? Like, you can't just, text Bill Belichick or message Bill Belichick and be like, yo, why'd you make this decision, right? Like, some of these things I can't provide that much detail on. But hopefully I can do it to the best of my abilities, and hopefully the fans at least see that I'm caring. Because again, that's what fans want. They care about this team, they care about these players, and they just want to see that management cares the same amount of way.
Yeah, for sure. On the other side of that, you've got kind of the anti-fans, right? Like, managing TSM fans is one thing, but you've got the anti-fans who just want to see TSM fail. Hey, anyone but TSM. I can't stand their fans. They're so, whatever. Is that something that, like how does that resonate with you? Do you kind of appreciate the opportunity to have anti-fans who at least you care about us in one way or another, or is it a purely negative thing?
To tell you the truth, I haven't actually put too much thought into that. And I think the main thing that I've always been focused on is like communicating with the people who do want to communicate with, TSM, which is, usually through the Discord or reaching out directly. But I think, and no matter what you do, whether that's in esports, whether that's in sports, whether that's in business, like, you're always going to have people who want to see you fail and will come out of the woodwork when you are failing. And that's just normal. Like, and I think the big thing that I'm just trying to be is like, I'm just trying to be a good guy, treat everyone as nicely as possible, treat everyone with respect, try to communicate with people. And if you're coming and you're hating after me, after like, based on something that happened with the org, years ago, I think it's you're not giving me a fair shot. And so, again, I don't expect people to give me a fair shot, but I think it's one of those things where it's just like, understand it's like, it's different people here. There's new things going on here. And give it a year. Let's see where things go here at TSM. This is a new era, and there's a lot of exciting things that are coming out of this. And so maybe you hated the old TSM, but maybe this new TSM is something you can like and get behind. And so that's all I'm asking for the people who maybe have a strong disdain for TSM.
Yeah, well, like them or hate them, you're going to hear from them either way. So it's just the way it goes. And the TSM Discord, definitely a fun place to pop into now and then. I like to do so. Yeah. And see what they say, how they respond to things. And I think, my experience with that has been, I think it speaks to a lot of what you've been talking about, where you can have people who, as a content creator too, who totally love or hate your work, but going in and making yourself present a little bit and saying like, oh, hey, hi, not even saying anything, or, answering a few basic questions and so on. And it can really change the perception and not win everyone over, and not everybody's going to love you all the time. But
100%.
Yeah, it can definitely shift things. And I think that's something that, being in kind of the journalist community or content creator community, and we've discussed a little bit off the air as well about the relationship that has sometimes existed between that area and TSM in the past, right, before you were involved at all. Seeing that kind of move in a positive direction and change is something that I'm very excited about, and I'm sure a lot of others are as well, and I hope it'll be good for the fan base. So,
good.
Yeah,
good,
I really
good,
appreciate you being present for this, and you were the one who reached out to me first, and it seemed like a good opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I love all the work you've done around, LCS Academy and highlighting new players that are coming up in the ecosystem. Some of the times that you've been on Hotline League and a lot of different areas like that. Again, I think it's just shedding that positivity and that light on some of these guys who may not be getting that initial exposure is really, really cool and also needed in this ecosystem, right? If you want people to invest in North American talent, you also got to shed light on who are the North American talent and who are the up and coming players. And so whether it's on TSM's team or on another LCS Orgs Academy team, or someone who's just doing really, really well in solo queue, I think shedding light on those cool stories is something you do a really, really good job at, and want to continue to support and help in any way possible. Cool.
Yeah. So again, thank you for sharing this time with me and with whoever's watching or listening to this as well. Is there anything you'd like to kind of shout out, a message you'd like to leave with the TSM fans before we wrap up?
No, yeah, sure. I think the thing I want to share is again, a lot of these changes and a lot of things that are taking place right now take time, right? Where we have a lot of excitement, a lot of exciting things coming up here. TSM as an org, from Dota to League of Legends to Valorant, and many other titles. But also a lot of the changes and fixing a lot of the processes that need to be put in place takes time, right? And so I think View 2022 is a year that where we're going to have a lot of wins, and there's going to be a lot of excitement coming. But we're also going to suffer some tough losses, and there's going to be a lot of pain points coming as we kind of make some of these corrective changes. And so as that happens, just please be understanding and be supportive as much as possible, and in understanding that 2022 is going to be exciting, but 2023 should even be better. So I'm really excited to be here. Really excited to be working with such smart and talented individuals here at TSM, and the future is really bright for TSM. And there's a lot of exciting things happening here. So hope if you're a bandwagon fan, now's the time to jump aboard.
Great. Well, that's gonna do it for us for now. You can support the TrueSight podcast at patreon.com/OraclesElixir. You can subscribe to the show on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, as well as at anchor.fm/TrueSight. And make sure you check out the Oracle's Elixir Discord server, where we talk about League of Legends esports, data science, and more. Just added a food channel, which was at high demand. So we're growing, we're buzzing. Links for all those things will be in the show notes, and to follow Dominic on Twitter as well. This has been the TrueSight podcast, and I'm Tim Sevenhuysen. Thanks for listening.